The wardrobe was open. That was the first thing Daniel Cole saw when he came through the bedroom door at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening. Not the absence of Rose's dresses, not the empty hangers moving slightly in the draft from the corridor, but the wardrobe itself, standing open the way it never stood open, because Rose was a person who closed things behind her with a quiet, habitual thoroughness that he had noticed early in their marriage and had come to think of as one of the textures of living with her. The wardrobe was open. He stood in the doorway for a moment. Then he walked into the room and looked at what was not there. The dresses. The 3 pairs of shoes she kept on the bottom shelf. The small jeweler box that her mother had given her. The specific smell of her, something warm and faintly botanical, that had lived in that wardrobe for 6 years and was now simply not there, replaced by the neutral smell of wood and the particular absence that a space has when it has been emptied of the person it was shaped around. He checked his phone. There was a message from her, sent at 4:15 while he had been in a site meeting in Lekki and his phone had been face down on a dusty table. It said, "I think we both know this is not working. I am not angry. I just cannot do this anymore. I will collect the remaining things when you are not there. I hope you are well, Daniel. I genuinely mean that." He read the message twice. He sat down on the bed. He sat there for a long time. He did not call her. He did not call his mother. He did not call anyone. He sat in the room that still smelled faintly of the marriage that had just ended, and he thought. Not about Rose, not yet, not about the specific shape of her absence or what it would mean in the practical terms of a shared life now being divided, but about the word no. We both know. He had been sitting with the knowledge for 6 years without naming it. She had been sitting with it too, apparently, and had named it today at 4:15 while he was looking at foundations in Lekki. She had named it and packed her dresses and left the wardrobe open and sent a message that was more honest than anything they had said to each other in the last 3 years at least. He looked at the open wardrobe. He thought, she left it open on purpose. He thought, that is exactly the kind of thing she would do. He put the phone face down on the bed beside him and sat in the specific, complete quiet of a house that has just changed into something else, and he let the evening come. He had been 31 when he married Rose. He had been 31 and recently inherited a property development company from a father who died too young and too suddenly for the inheritance to feel like anything other than an emergency. And he had been managing the emergency for 7 months when his mother sat across from him at the dining room table and said that she had someone she wanted him to meet. He had not been looking for a wife. He had not been looking for anything except the next structural survey and the quarterly figures and some version of sleep that lasted more than 4 hours. But his mother had said, just meet her. Just have dinner. That is all I am asking. His mother's just was a word that contained many things. He had had dinner with Rose and her family on a Saturday in November. Rose was 29, precise and contained, with the kind of intelligence that expressed itself through the quality of her questions rather than the volume of her contributions. She was not warm exactly, that was not the right word, but she was real. There was a specific quality of realness to her that he had noticed across the dinner table and had thought, I could build something with this person. He had not thought, I want to. He had not known, at 31, that the difference between those 2 sentences was the size of a life. The wedding had been 6 months later. Beautiful, entirely organized by his mother down to the arrangement of the centerpieces, attended by everyone who mattered to both families and several people who mattered only to the caterer. Daniel had stood at the altar and looked at Rose walking toward him and had felt something that was not love exactly and was not indifference either. Something in between, something that had the quality of a reasonable decision being confirmed. She had arrived at the altar and looked at him with the same expression. They had both known, even then, in the way that 2 honest people always know when something is being built on a foundation that is sufficient but not quite right. They had said their vows anyway. They had meant them in the way that people mean things they have decided to mean. The marriage had lasted 6 years. It had not been unhappy. This was the thing Daniel kept returning to in the days after Rose left. Not the unhappiness, because there had not been enough of it to name, but the specific texture of 6 years of adequacy. The shared meals that were pleasant without being nourishing. The evenings in separate rooms that were comfortable without being chosen. The family occasions attended side by side with the practiced ease of 2 people who had learned each other's surfaces without ever fully descending into each other's depths. Rose was a good person. He was a good person. They had been, together, two good people in a house with sufficient furniture and insufficient gravity. He understood this more clearly now, sitting in the house with her things gone, than he had understood it in any of the 6 years of living inside it. He went to work on Wednesday. He came home on Wednesday evening to the empty house and stood in the kitchen and made himself food he did not particularly want and ate it at the table where they had shared 500 dinners, and he thought about what was true. What was true was that he was not devastated. He was sad, in the way that the end of something real always produces sadness even when the ending is correct. He was aware of a specific guilt. Not the guilt of having done something wrong, but the harder guilt of having failed to do something right for 6 years, of having let a good woman spend 6 years inside a marriage that was not quite the right shape for either of them. He was aware that he owed Rose more than a phone call she had not asked for and a wardrobe she had left open. What he was not was surprised. "We both know," she had said. He had known. He had simply not known what to do with what he knew, and so he had done nothing, and 6 years had passed, and Rose had packed her dresses and left the wardrobe open and sent a message that was more honest than the marriage had been. He washed his plate. He turned off the kitchen light. He went to sit in the study. His study, which smelled of old drawings and good paper, which was the room in the house that had always felt most like him, and he sat at his desk and he thought about the things he had been not looking at for 6 years. He thought about Margaret. She had been 23 when he met her. He had been 23 too, first year of his master's program, in the university library at 10:15 in the morning, reaching for an architectural reference book that someone else was already reaching for. He had looked up. A woman his age, natural hair in a loose cloud around her face, dark eyes that held the particular expression of someone who has identified an obstacle and is already calculating how to manage it. She was holding one end of the book. He was holding the other. "I need this one," she said, not as a request, as a statement of fact. "I also need this one," he said. She looked at him. "What for?" "Comparative analysis of post-colonial urban planning frameworks," he said. "You?" "The same thing," she said. "Which means one of us has the wrong supervisor." They had stood in the library holding opposite ends of the book for long enough that a passing student had looked at them with concern. Then Margaret had said, "There is a table by the window. We could share it. 1 hour each." He had said, "All right." They had shared the table for 4 hours. They had argued productively about post-colonial urban frameworks, and then about architecture more broadly, and then about something else entirely that neither of them could have named afterward, but that had the quality of two people discovering that their minds worked in a similar and complementary way. Not identically, which would have been less interesting, but with the specific compatibility of two people who think differently enough to challenge each other and similarly enough to understand the challenge. He had walked back to his room that evening thinking about the argument and not thinking about the woman, and then thinking about both at the same time and understanding that they were not separable. They had been friends for 15 years. He did not use the word only when he thought about it. He was honest enough with himself to know that only was not the right word. But he had never found the right word, and so he had used the word friends and had meant something larger than it contained and had lived inside that inadequacy for 15 years. In the study on Wednesday evening, sitting alone for the 3rd day since Rose left, Daniel Cole looked at this fact directly for the first time. He looked at it the way he looked at difficult structures. Steadily, without flinching, trying to understand not just what it was but why it had been built the way it had been built and what it would take to build it differently. He sat with it for a long time. Then he picked up his phone. He did not call Margaret. He was not ready for that yet. He called no one. He went to bed. He lay in the dark in the bedroom that still smelled faintly of the wrong marriage, and he thought about what it meant to spend 15 years holding one end of something and never asking what the other person was holding. He did not sleep for a long time, but he was thinking more clearly than he had thought in years. That, at least, was something. Across the city, in a flat in Ikoyi on the 14th floor with a view of the lagoon that she had chosen specifically for what it did to mornings, the particular quality of light on water at 6:30, the city not yet at full volume, Margaret was awake. She was usually awake at this hour. She was a corporate lawyer with a practice that rewarded early mornings, and she had spent 12 years training herself to be present for them, to sit with coffee at the window before the day made its demands, to give herself 20 minutes of genuine quiet before the structure of the working hours arrived. She was sitting at the window now with her coffee, looking at the lagoon. She had heard about Rose 2 days ago. A message from a mutual friend, casual, informational, the kind of message that travels through the connective tissue of a social world when something significant happens to someone within it. She had read it once. She had set her phone down. She had picked it up again and read it twice more. Then she had made coffee and sat at the window and felt something that she did not immediately name. She was good at not immediately naming things. She had learned this the way she had learned most of the useful things in her life, through specific experience with the cost of doing it differently. She had learned that the first name you give a feeling is rarely the accurate one, and that accuracy mattered more than speed in most things, and that this was especially true when the feeling concerned Daniel Cole. She had known Daniel for 15 years. She had understood what that meant, the full shape of what it meant, since she was 28. She had sat with that understanding for 7 years, first while he was single and then while he was arranged and then while he was married, and she had made a specific peace with it that had required more work than she had told anyone and had resulted in something that was genuinely peace. Not performance. Not suppression. Peace. She had moved on. She was certain of this because she had tested the certainty carefully, the way she tested everything, by examining it from multiple directions, by asking herself the uncomfortable questions, by sitting with the answers until she was sure they were answers and not wishes. She had been in a relationship for 14 months that had ended 8 months ago. The man had been good, genuinely good, professionally accomplished, kind in the specific ways that kindness is most useful. She had ended it because kind and good were not sufficient, because she had arrived, finally, at the understanding that sufficiency was not the standard she was willing to live by. She had learned that, at least, she had not settled. She was 35 years old. Her life was full. Her work was good. Her friendships were real. She had the specific, settled quality of a person who has built something from their own materials and knows its weight. She sipped her coffee. She looked at the lagoon. She thought about the message for a moment, casual, informational, and then she set it down in the part of herself that she had learned to be careful about, and she went to get ready for work. She had a full day. She had always had a full day. That was the thing about Margaret that Daniel had never fully understood. She had never been waiting. She had a life. She had always had a life. What she had also had for 15 years was him in it. And now something had shifted. She did not know yet what the shift meant. She was in no hurry to find out. She had learned, the hard way and then the easier way, that some things reveal their shape in their own time, and that the attempt to accelerate that revelation always costs more than it returns. She put on her jacket. She went to work. Daniel went to see his mother on Saturday. He had not called ahead. This was unusual. Mama Cole was a woman who organized her time with the specific intentionality of someone who understood that time was the only resource that could not be replenished, and she expected the people in her life to respect this. Daniel had respected it for 38 years. He had called ahead for Sunday lunches and brief visits and conversations that could have been managed by phone. He had always announced himself. He did not announce himself on Saturday. He drove to the house in Gbagada, the house he had grown up in, solid and well-maintained, with the particular quality of a home that has been organized by the same person for 30 years and has absorbed, in every detail, the character of that person. The garden was precisely kept. The curtains were drawn at exactly the same angle on both windows. The doormat was centered. He rang the bell. His mother opened the door. She looked at his face and she understood immediately that something had happened, because Mama Cole had always been able to read her son's face with the accuracy of someone who had been studying it for 38 years and had never stopped paying attention. "Come in," she said. She did not ask what had happened. She led him to the sitting room and she made tea he had not requested and she sat across from him and she waited, which was something she was very good at when she chose to deploy it. "Rose left," he said. His mother was still. "Tuesday," he said. "I came home and her things were gone." Mama Cole set her cup down. She looked at her hands for a moment. Then she looked at her son with the specific expression of a woman who has been holding a complicated thing for a long time and has just been told she no longer needs to hold it. Not relief exactly, which would have been wrong, but something adjacent to it. The particular stillness of a person whose internal accounting has just been confirmed by external events. I am sorry, she said. Are you? Daniel said. Not aggressively. Genuinely. The question of a man who has spent 3 days thinking and has arrived at a place where he needs honest answers more than comfortable ones. His mother looked at him. I am sorry that you are in pain, she said carefully. I am not sorry that the truth has arrived. I have been waiting for the truth to arrive for some time. Daniel looked at her. You knew it wasn't working. I knew it from the second year, she said. I am not without eyes, Daniel. And you said nothing. What would I have said? She picked up her cup again. Her hands were steady. You were both managing. The company was growing. There was no visible disaster. I told myself that managing was enough. That people build real things from arrangements that begin without the other thing. Without love, Daniel said. His mother was quiet. You can say it, he said. We are past the point where saying it makes it worse. Without love, she said. Very quietly. Yes. The sitting room held the word for a moment. Daniel looked at the room he had grown up in, the specific furniture of his childhood, the photographs on the sideboard, the painting above the fireplace that his father had bought on a trip up north 30 years ago that his mother had always said she did not particularly like and had kept on the wall for 30 years anyway. He looked at all of it and thought about what it meant to live inside arrangements that were sufficient without being chosen. Why Rose? He said. His mother looked at him. I mean specifically, he said. You met her once before you decided. One dinner. Why her? Mama Cole set her cup down again. She was quiet for long enough that Daniel understood. She was not finding the words but deciding whether to say them. Because she was safe, his mother said finally. He waited. She was from a good family. She was capable and honest, and she was not the kind of woman who would destabilize you. Who would? She stopped. Tried again. I wanted someone who would be steady. Who would let you be steady. Someone who would not ask too much. Someone who would not challenge me, Daniel said. Someone who would not hurt you, his mother said. And the word hurt carried something in it, a specific weight, a specific direction that Daniel recognized. He was very still. You were protecting me from something, he said. Not just from a bad marriage. From something specific. His mother looked at her hands. Mama, he said. She looked up. I have known Margaret for 15 years, he said. You have known that I have known her for 15 years. You have met her. You have sat across from her at this table. He paused. Is that what you were protecting me from? The sitting room was very quiet. She would have asked everything of you, his mother said. Not as an accusation. As an explanation that had been waiting a long time to be given. I could see it. Not because she is a bad person. She is not a bad person, Daniel. I have never said she was a bad person. But because of the way you are when she is in a room. The way you have always been. I could see what it would cost you. What it would demand. And I thought a steadier thing would be better for you. A thing that did not have that kind of power, Daniel said. His mother did not answer. You were protecting me from the thing I actually wanted, Daniel said. He said it without anger. With the specific, quiet weight of a man who has finally said the sentence he has been constructing for 3 days. Mama Cole looked at her son. She had the expression of a woman who has been right about many things and has just understood, with complete clarity, the specific and irreversible cost of one of them. She did not defend herself. She said, yes. The word sat in the room between them like something that had been waiting to be set down. Daniel looked at his mother for a long moment. He thought about what it meant to love someone the way she loved him, completely with total investment, with the specific certainty of a person who knows what is good and has never stopped believing that knowing what is good is the same as knowing what is right. He thought about what it cost her to say yes. He thought about what it had cost him and Rose and Margaret that she had not said it 6 years earlier. He did not say any of this. He picked up his tea. They sat together in the sitting room for another hour, talking about other things, the company, the properties under development, a cousin's child who had just started secondary school. The normal texture of a family conversation. Both of them understanding that the hard part had been said, and that saying it did not resolve anything but had changed the quality of the air between them. When he left, his mother stood at the door and watched him go. She had the expression of a woman who has just seen very clearly the shape of the thing she built and the shape of what it cost. She went inside. She sat in the sitting room alone for a long time. Margaret heard from Daniel on a Thursday. Not a call. A message, which was unlike him. Daniel was a person who called, who preferred the texture of a voice to the flatness of text, who had once told her that messages were for logistics and conversations were for things that mattered. She had agreed with him. They had always agreed about the things that mattered. The message said, "Can we meet? Not urgently. Just, I'd like to see you." She read it twice. She was at her desk at 7:30 in the morning, the Lego skyline doing what it always did at this hour, reassembling itself from the previous night, the light thickening, the traffic beginning its particular argument with the city's geography. She had a full day. A client meeting at 9, a contract review at 11, lunch with a colleague she had been postponing for 3 weeks. She read the message again. She typed, "Saturday. Our usual place. 11. She put the phone face down on her desk. She turned back to her work. She was good at turning back to her work. She had built her professional life on the specific discipline of being fully present in whatever she was doing, of not allowing the compartments of her life to bleed into each other at inconvenient times. It was a skill she had developed and refined and was genuinely proud of. She turned back to her work. She lasted 7 minutes before she picked the phone up again and looked at the message. She put it back down. She lasted 4 minutes. This was, she noted, not the behavior of a person who had fully moved on. This was the behavior of a person who had moved on in every department except the specific one that contained Daniel Cole, which was inconvenient and also, if she was honest with herself, which she always was eventually, not entirely surprising. She had done the work. She had genuinely done the work of moving on. She had named the feeling, examined it, set it in its correct proportion, built a life that did not depend on it. She had meant it when she thought it. What she had perhaps not fully accounted for was the difference between moving on from something that is still happening and moving on from something that has ended. Rose had left. The thing that had been the reason for the work of moving on was no longer the thing it had been. She sat with this for a moment. Then she stood up, straightened her jacket, and went to her 9 o'clock meeting. She was a corporate lawyer. She had built her practice on the understanding that feelings were real and that they could be managed without being suppressed, and that the management of them was a skill like any other skill, requiring attention, requiring practice, requiring the specific honesty of a person who does not confuse what they feel with what they should do about it. She had felt things about Daniel Cole for 7 years. She had managed them. She would continue to manage them. On Saturday she would have coffee with her oldest friend and she would listen to what he needed to say, and she would be present for it in the way she had always been present for the things that mattered to him. That was what she had. That was what she had chosen. She walked into her 9 o'clock meeting. She was completely present. For most of it. The coffee place was on a quiet street in Victoria Island. Small, not fashionable, with the particular unpretentious quality of somewhere that has been good for a long time without needing to announce it. They had been coming here for 11 years. The owner knew their orders. The table by the window had, by unspoken agreement, become theirs across a decade of Saturday mornings. Daniel arrived first. This was unusual. Margaret was the one who arrived first. She was early to everything, had been early to everything since university, operated on the theory that the person who arrives first controls the quality of the beginning of the thing. She had told him this once and he had laughed and said that sounded exhausting, and she had said that was because he had never tried it. He sat at the table by the window and watched the street and waited. She came through the door at 11:03, which meant she had been outside at 11 and had composed herself before entering, which was something he had always noticed about her and had never said. She sat down across from him. She looked at him with the specific quality of attention she had always brought to the things that mattered. Her full face, her full presence, the sense of a person who has decided to be entirely here and has set everything else down. "How are you?" she said. "Honestly," he said. "Always," she said. "I'm better than I expected to be," he said. Which is its own kind of information. She nodded. She understood what he meant. The owner brought their orders without being asked. Coffee for both. A small pastry for Margaret that she would eat half of and leave the rest, which had been the pattern for 11 years. Tell me what happened, she said. He told her. Not everything. Not the interior monologue of 3 days alone in the house, not the conversation with his mother, not the part that concerned her specifically, not yet. He told her the facts. Rose's message. The open wardrobe. The specific quality of a Tuesday evening that had simply become a different kind of life. Margaret listened without interrupting. She was good at listening, genuinely good, the kind of good that is not passive but active, that required her to be completely quiet inside in order to receive what was being said with the attention it deserved. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Are you sad? She said. Yes, he said. Not devastated. Sad. He stopped. There's a difference between the end of something that was wrong and the end of something that was bad. This was the end of something that was wrong, which is sadder in some ways, because it was real. It was just not right, Margaret said. No, he said. It wasn't right. She looked at him. She was doing the thing she did when she was thinking carefully. A slight stillness in her face, the quality of a person running through something internal before speaking. Daniel, she said. Yes. I want to say something and I want you to hear it properly before you respond. He looked at her. Go ahead. I have been your friend for 15 years, she said. And I know you. I know how you think and how you avoid thinking and the specific things you move toward and the specific things you move away from. She paused. And I know that this conversation, being here, telling me this, is not only about Rose. He was very still. I'm not saying that too. She stopped. Tried again. I'm not opening a door. I'm not making an invitation. I'm just telling you that I know, that I have always known, and that whatever you're beginning to understand, I need you to understand it properly and completely before you bring it anywhere near me. He looked at her across the table. Because she stopped again. She looked at her coffee. When she looked back up, her face had the expression he had seen in her maybe 4 times in 15 years, the specific expression of Margaret when she was being honest at significant personal cost. I have already done the part of this where I sat with what I understood and made peace with it. I have already been in that room. And I cannot go back into it. If you are beginning to see something, you need to see it all the way. Not halfway. All the way. She picked up her coffee. She drank it. She put it down. Okay, Daniel said, very quietly. Okay, meaning you understand? She said. Okay, meaning I understand, he said. They sat for a moment in the specific quiet of 2 people who have said something real and are allowing it to settle before they say anything else. Tell me about the project in Lekki, Margaret said then, because she was Margaret and she knew how to hold the important thing and also keep the morning moving, and because 15 years of friendship had given them the specific language of people who understand when to press and when to let things breathe. He told her about the project in Lekki. They sat at the table by the window for another hour. It was, as it had always been, the best hour of his week. He had simply not allowed himself to know that until now. Mama Cole called Margaret on a Wednesday morning. Margaret was between meetings when the call came. Standing in the corridor outside a conference room with a coffee she had not yet had time to drink, reviewing a clause in her head that she wanted to revisit before the afternoon session. She looked at the name on the screen. She stood very still for a moment. Then she answered. Mrs. Cole, she said. Margaret. A pause. I know this is unexpected. I would like to meet with you. Not with Daniel. Without Daniel. If you are willing. Margaret looked at the corridor. At the conference room door. At the coffee going cold in her hand. When? She said. Whenever is convenient for you, Mama Cole said. Which from a woman who organized her time with military precision was itself a statement. Margaret thought for a moment. Friday, she said. 12:30. There is a restaurant I know. I will send you the name. I will be there, Mama Cole said. She ended the call. Margaret stood in the corridor for a moment longer than was necessary. Then she went back into the conference room and was completely present for the rest of the afternoon, which required more discipline than it usually did. They arrived within 2 minutes of each other. Margaret was there first. Of course she was, sitting at a corner table with her back to the wall in the way she always sat when she needed to see the room. Mama Cole came through the door at 12:32, wearing a plain wrapper, carrying nothing, moving with the specific upright authority of a woman who has presided over things for decades and has never stopped knowing it. She sat down. They looked at each other. They had met perhaps a dozen times over 15 years, at Daniel's family occasions, at dinners, once at the company's anniversary event where Margaret had come as Daniel's guest and Mama Cole had watched her across the room with the careful, unreadable attention that Margaret had always understood and had never acknowledged. They had never sat across from each other alone. "Thank you for coming," Mama Cole said. "You said you wanted to talk," Margaret said. "I am here." A waiter came. They ordered Margaret water and a salad she would eat, Mama Cole tea and something small she would not. The waiter left. Mama Cole looked at her hands for a moment. Then she looked up. "I knew what you were to him," she said. "From early. From before the marriage. I knew what the friendship was, and I knew what was underneath the friendship, and I chose Rose anyway." She paused. "I want you to know that I knew." Margaret looked at her steadily. "I know you knew," she said. "I knew you knew." Mama Cole absorbed this. "You never said anything." "No," Margaret said. "What would I have said? You were his mother. The decision was his to make. And he—" She stopped. Something moved across her face briefly, the specific movement of a person touching something they keep carefully managed. "He made the decision he made. Or he allowed it to be made for him, which is a different thing, but the result was the same." "I should not have arranged it," Mama Cole said. "No," Margaret said. "Simply, I believed I was protecting him." "I know," Margaret said. "I have always known that. You are not a cruel woman, Mrs. Cole. You are a woman who loves her son and who made a decision from that love that was wrong. Those are different things." Mama Cole looked at her. "You are more generous than I deserve." "I am accurate," Margaret said. "Generosity and accuracy are not the same thing." A brief silence. The restaurant moved around them, the midday Lagos world doing what it always did, indifferent and complete. "He came to see me," Mama Cole said. 2 weeks ago. He asked me why I chose Rose." "I know," Margaret said. "He told me. He said—" Mama Cole paused. "He said I was protecting him from the thing he actually wanted." "Yes," Margaret said. "Was he right?" Margaret looked at her. "You already know he was right. That is why you called me." Mama Cole was quiet. "What I want to understand," Mama Cole said carefully, "is what is true now, not what was true 6 years ago. Not what I prevented or what I arranged or what the cost of it was. What is true now, between you and my son." Margaret was still for a moment. She picked up her water. She set it down. "He is beginning to see something," she said. "Something he should have seen a long time ago, which is not his fault entirely because he was not given the conditions to see it clearly. He is beginning to understand what he has wanted and what it has cost to not know that." She paused. "That is what is true about Daniel." "And you," Mama Cole said. Margaret looked at her directly. "I have already done the part where I understood what I felt and made peace with it. I have already been in the room where that reckoning happens. I am not there anymore." She paused. "I have a life. It is full and it is real and it is mine. I did not build it while waiting for your son. I built it for myself. That is an important distinction." Mama Cole nodded slowly. "Then what happens now?" she said. "I don't know," Margaret said. And there was something in the honesty of it, the specific, clean honesty of a woman who does not manufacture certainty when certainty is not available, that made Mama Cole understand, perhaps for the first time, exactly what kind of person her son had been friends with for 15 years. "I told him," Margaret said, "that if he is beginning to see something, he needs to see it completely, not halfway, all the way. And then—" she stopped. "Whatever comes after that is its own question. I am not going to answer it in advance." Mama Cole looked at her across the table. "I built a wall around my son," she said, very quietly. "I built it to protect him. I did not understand that the wall was also keeping out the thing I was trying to protect him for." She paused. "I understand that now." Margaret looked at her. "It is the most honest thing you have ever said to me," she said. Mama Cole almost smiled. It was a small, complicated expression that held many things, regret and recognition and something that was not quite resolution but was in its direction. "I am sorry," Mama Cole said. "Not to Daniel only. To you. What you have carried, what I asked you to carry without asking you by the decision I made, that was not fair." Margaret received this. She did not perform gratitude. She did not deflect. She received it as the real thing it was. "Thank you," she said. They ate their lunch. They talked, not about Daniel, not about the past, but about other things. Margaret's work. A case she found interesting. Mama Cole's garden, which had become more elaborate since her husband died, and which she tended with the same specific intentionality she brought to everything. The particular things that two women who have been circling each other for 15 years find to say when they finally sit in the same room without anything between them. When they left, they stood on the street outside for a moment. "Will you tell me?" Mama Cole said. "Whatever happens. Eventually. I am not asking for information I am not owed. I am asking because—" She stopped. "Because I would like to know that he sees clearly. Whatever he sees." Margaret looked at her. "He will tell you himself," she said. "When there is something to tell." She walked to her car. She drove back to her office. She sat at her desk for a moment before opening anything. Then she opened her laptop and went back to work. What Daniel understood arrived not in a single moment but in the way that real understanding arrives, gradually, and then completely, like a building that has been under construction for a long time finally becoming readable as the thing it was always going to be. He understood it at a site visit in the third week, standing in the shell of a new development in Lekki, watching his team work through the framing of a particular wall, and thinking not about the wall, not about the framing, about what Margaret had said. All the way, not halfway. He thought about what all the way looked like. He thought about 23 in a university library, holding one end of a book. He thought about 15 years of the best conversations he had ever had with anyone. He thought about the specific quality of a Saturday morning at a table by a window, the particular ease of a friendship that had never required performance, that had always had the quality of something chosen rather than arranged. He thought about the fact that Rose had described his attention when he talked about Margaret as different. She had said this to him once, quietly, in the 4th year of the marriage, and he had said that was not what it was, and she had looked at him with the expression of a woman who knows exactly what it is and has decided not to press it. He thought about the open wardrobe. He thought, "Rose knew before I did. Rose knew and left the wardrobe open and sent a message that said we both know, and she was right. We both knew. I just had not yet decided to know it." He stood in the shell of the building in Lekki and he made the decision. Not to call Margaret. Not yet. That was not what deciding looked like. Deciding looked like this. He went back to his office and he sat at his desk and he took out a piece of paper. Actual paper, because some things required paper, and he wrote down the specific, honest shape of what he felt and what he wanted and what he was willing to do about it. He wrote it for himself, not for her. He wrote it until the shape of it was completely clear and he could not add anything to it and could not take anything away. Then he sat with it for 3 days. He checked it on the 2nd day. Still true. He checked it on the 3rd day. Still true. On the 4th day he called Margaret. She answered on the 2nd ring. "I need to say something," he said. A pause. "Go ahead. I have spent 15 years not saying this," he said. "Not because I didn't know it. I knew it. I have known it in the specific way that you know something you are not ready to do anything about. And I was not ready because—" He stopped. "Tried again. Because you were the most important person in my life, and the most important things are the ones you are most afraid of being wrong about." Margaret was quiet. "I am saying it now," he said. "Not because Rose left and not because the circumstances changed. I am saying it because you told me to see it all the way and I have seen it all the way, and it is still true at the end of all the way, and I owe you the honesty of saying so." He stopped. He waited. "Daniel," Margaret said. "Yes. I heard you," she said. He waited. "I need you to understand something," she said. "What I said at the coffee place about already being in that room, about having moved on, that is true. It is not performance. I have genuinely built a life that does not depend on this. On you. On whatever this could be." A pause. "Do you understand that?" "Yes," he said. "Because what I am not willing to do," she said. Is dismantle what I have built in order to fill a space that was left by a marriage that should not have happened. I am not a contingency, Daniel. I have never been a contingency. I know, he said. That is not what I am saying. Then what are you saying? He thought for a moment. He wanted to get this right. I am saying that I see you, he said. I am saying that I have always seen you, and I have spent 15 years pretending that seeing you was the same as seeing a friend, and it was not the same thing, and I know that now, and I am not asking you to do anything about it. I am not willing to let another 15 years pass without having said it. Whatever you do with it, whatever it means or does not mean for what comes next. I needed to say it because it is true, and I have been carrying it without naming it, and I am done carrying things without naming them. A long silence. Okay, Margaret said, very quietly. Okay meaning, he said. Okay meaning I heard you, she said. And okay meaning thank you, for saying it properly. For not saying it halfway. Another pause. And okay meaning I need some time. Not to decide whether I feel something. I am not going to pretend I don't know the answer to that. But to decide what I want to do with what I feel. Which is my choice to make. In my own time. I know, he said. Take whatever time you need. Daniel. Yes. Don't wait, she said. I'm not asking you to wait. Live your life. Do your work. Be the person you are when you are not avoiding something. That is what I need from you right now. Not waiting. Just being. He was quiet for a moment. All right, he said. Good, she said. She ended the call. She sat at her desk in the Ikoyi office with the lagoon outside the window and the evening light doing what it always did, and she allowed herself, for 30 seconds, to feel the full size of what had just been said. 30 seconds. Then she picked up her pen. She went back to work. Rose was in a different city by then. She had moved, not dramatically, not as a statement, but with the specific purposeful practicality of a woman who had spent 6 years organizing herself around a life that was not quite right and had now given herself permission to organize herself around one that might be. She had a flat. She had her work, which she had always been good at and which she was finding, in the absence of the particular management that the marriage had required, she was better at than she had known. She had friends she was seeing more often. She had the specific, surprising lightness of a person who has set down something heavy enough that she had stopped noticing its weight until it was gone. She was not happy in the simple sense. Simple happiness was not her register. She had always been a more complicated instrument than that. But she was honest. She was present. She was more entirely herself than she had been in 6 years. She did not think about Daniel often. When she did, she thought about him without bitterness, which had surprised her at first and then had stopped surprising her, because the marriage had not been bitter. It had been wrong. Those were different things, and she had always understood the difference. She thought, he was a good man in the wrong room. She thought, I was a good woman in the wrong room. She thought, we were both good people who deserved to be in the right room, and neither of us had the courage to say so for 6 years, and the only thing I regret is the years, not the ending. She opened her laptop. She had work to do. She was, for the first time in a long time, genuinely looking forward to it. Daniel did not wait. He did what Margaret had asked. He lived his life. He went to sites and reviewed plans and managed his team and had dinner with friends and called his mother on Sundays and slowly, in the way that a person does when they have stopped avoiding something, became more fully present in his own existence. He was different in a way he could not entirely describe and did not try to. More direct, less managed. The specific quality of a person who has stopped carrying something that was not serving him and has found, in the absence of the carrying, that he has more of himself available for everything else. He called Margaret on Sundays, as he always had. They talked about their weeks. They argued about things productively in the way they always had. They did not talk about what he had said on the phone or about what came next or about the specific question that had been in the room between them for 15 years. They were friends. They had always been friends. The friendship was real and was not performance and was not waiting dressed as something else. It was simply the thing they were, which had always been more than one thing at a time. 3 months after the phone call, Margaret asked him to meet her. Not at their usual place. A different restaurant. Somewhere she had chosen, which meant something because Margaret was a woman who chose things deliberately and whose choices always meant something. He arrived first. For the first time in 15 years, he arrived before her. She came through the door 7 minutes later. She sat down across from him. She looked at him with the specific quality of attention she brought to the things that mattered. "I have been thinking," she said. "I know," he said. "I want to be very clear about something," she said. "Before anything else. I am not here because I have been waiting. I am not here because the circumstances changed and now it is convenient. I am here because I have thought carefully and honestly about what I want and what I am willing to do about it, and I have arrived at an answer." "Okay," he said. "I want to try," she said. "Not because I owe it to the feeling or to the 15 years or to whatever it was I set down and picked back up and set down again. But because I want to, because you said it properly, because you saw it all the way." She paused. "And because I have spent 7 years being honest with myself about what I feel, and I am done being honest about it only to myself." He looked at her across the table. "Margaret," he said. "Yes. I have wanted to have this conversation for 15 years. He said. "I know," she said. "So have I. Why didn't you?" "Because you were not ready," she said simply. "And because I was not willing to carry us both. I have only ever been willing to carry myself." She looked at him steadily. "That has not changed. I need you to know that has not changed." "I know," he said. "Good," she said. She picked up the menu. He picked up his menu. They ordered dinner. It was, for the first time, the beginning of a thing that was entirely chosen. There is something this story wants to say before it closes. It is not about a marriage that was arranged and ended. It is not about a mother who loved too much in the wrong direction. It is not about the 15 years of a friendship that was always more than one thing at a time. What it is about is this: the difference between a life that has been arranged and a life that has been chosen is not always visible from the outside. Both can look correct. Both can look functional. The person inside is the one who knows. The person inside always knows, even when they have spent years in the specific discipline of not knowing. Daniel knew. He had always known. He simply had not given himself the conditions to act on what he knew, and so he had arranged himself into someone else's arrangement and had lived there for 6 years with the specific quality of a man in a room where the proportions are slightly wrong. Rose knew too. She had known from the altar, and she had left when she understood that knowing without acting was its own kind of dishonesty, and that she deserved more than a marriage that was sufficient. And Margaret had known the longest, and she had done the most difficult thing of all. She had named what she knew, made peace with it, built a life that did not depend on it, and waited not with the passivity of someone who has no other option but with the specific active patience of a person who has decided what they are worth and is not willing to accept less. She did not wait for Daniel. She lived. And when Daniel finally arrived, fully, clearly, with the specific courage of a man who has stopped avoiding himself, she was ready. Not because she had been waiting, because she had been living. And living, done properly, is the best possible preparation for the thing that finally arrives when you have stopped trying to force it. There is a question this story leaves you with. How many people in your life are carrying something they have never said? Not because they do not know it, they know it, but because the conditions were not right, or the timing was wrong, or they were afraid of being wrong about the most important thing, or because someone else made a decision that rearranged the room before they could find the door. And how long are you willing to let the thing stay unsaid? Daniel waited 15 years. The 15 years were not wasted. They built the friendship, they built the person, they built the specific quality of seeing that made the saying possible when it finally came. But they were 15 years. The question is whether they needed to be. The question is what you are carrying right now unsaid, in the room you have arranged yourself into, and what it would cost you and the person on the other side to finally say it.